building an ecosystem is not done only by investors and founders and standalone startups. Enterprises, large enterprises also play an important role in ecosystems. We're lucky to have, for a panel discussion, Bernhard Schambeck, CEO of BMW Startup Garage. Very nice to meet you. I'll start shaking hands. Then he will tell us about his venture client model. Please have a seat. We have Christian Lindener he's the global head of Airbus Bizlabs. That's really cool. Please have a seat. And we have Youssouf Kamal, Senior Strategy Associate at Sheraa. Youssouf Kamal, Youssouf? Oh. And finally, we have Asmae Lemniei, Advisor and Managing Director at Lindener Consulting. Hey, thank you. Enjoy the panel, please.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here for a panel about corporate innovation and everything it entails. I'm really delighted to having today three amazing people who are great in what they do. So I'm welcoming actually Bernhard. Bernhard, welcome. Chris and Youssouf. Please a round of applause for them.
Thank you.
So corporate innovation actually is such a big word and as well a buzzword today. So I just want to, start, before going and deep diving into this ocean that corporate innovation is, to just do a kind of tour de table, and if you may introduce yourself and what you are doing exactly, and we can start with you, Bernhard.
Sure, yeah. So I'm Bernhard. I'm running at BMW's BMW Startup Garage. BMW Startup Garage is a dedicated unit. We are completely focused on a strategic approach in partnership with startups in an early stage phase. In a phase where it's usually not so common for a big corporate to work with a startup, so it's often in a stage where a startup doesn't have a mature product yet or a market-ready product. But it's quite interesting for us to tap in early enough into that innovation and technology and to make collaboration successful so we can deliver this innovation to our customers, so to say.
And how long have you been doing that for?
Say it again?
How long have you been doing that for? That's true, we can't hear each other actually in the panel.
How long?
How many years?
How many years? So I'm doing that for 2 years now. The BMW Startup Garage was founded in 2015. Short explanation on how it works. Our program, or this project, usually lasts 4 months.
Okay.
And it's completely no strings attached partnership. So
equity free. You're gonna bring the startup and you work with it.
Exactly. No exclusivity. IP stays with the startup because we say the most important thing is to figure out what the technology is all about and what's impact. And based on that, we can then design and discuss a further engagement.
Perfect. Thank you.
Just to finish, that value proposition makes it very attractive. We call it the venture client approach, venture client compared to venture capital, because we don't invest in equity. And that value proposition makes it quite interesting for startups to team up with us.
Awesome. Now, I'm going to go back into the details, into your interesting model, which is kind of in-house corporate venturing model that BMW has developed. How about you, Chris? Can you please tell us more about what you do on a daily basis?
Yeah, sure. So I just took over the corporate venturing unit of Airbus, the airplanes. And what we do is a hybrid approach. So we do work with startups. So the Bizlab, as it's called, should be the smooth interface for startups to work with Airbus. Similar to the venture client approach of the BMW Startup Garage. But on top, we also have nurturing of intrapreneurs, meaning we work with people from inside of the company to help them create their companies. So really when they have beyond an idea, when the idea is tested, validated, and prototyped, we get these people outside of the company into the Bizlab and build their venture. This would eventually lead to a spin out of Airbus, or to a spin in, meaning the creation of a new business unit within Airbus. Prior to that, I managed the accelerators of Telefonica, the telco, Vira in Munich. And there we had, was a pure accelerator model, the equity-based accelerator model. And I can just rephrase what Bernhard also did. If you take equity within a startup, first of all, I highly doubt that you will get the best startups. And secondly, you always have an interest of conflict there. So for a corporate, an equity-free model only makes more sense.
All right, thank you so much.
You can elaborate that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Youssouf?
Well, my name is Youssouf Kamal. I am a Senior Strategy Associate at Sheraa. So Sheraa, as some of you might know, has a holistic approach when it comes to startups. So we intervene in and at every level and at every pillar of the ecosystem, from spreading an entrepreneurial culture through events like this, like CEF, to business support to startups with an acceleration approach, with sessions, coaching, mentoring, and training. We also work in providing access to market to startups, access to investment. We do advocacy in terms of policy and regulations. And of course, we provide access to human capital. When it comes to corporate innovation, Sheraa is an innovation platform that connects corporates in that have needs and goals in terms of innovation to innovative startups. And we do that through our new program called Access Sharjah, where the main goal is to source innovative startups for corporations. Mm-hmm. So we act basically as an innovation platform.
Awesome. And again, now, if you want to start talking about the subject, let's just put the context in place. We are in a context of hyper disruption, where all industries across sectors are being disrupted by 1,000 cuts. And if we were not having this change in the way we are capturing and creating value, we won't be today talking about corporate innovation. So, two questions for you, gentlemen, and each one of you. How do you see your industry changing? What are the signs of disruption? And how do you define corporate innovation, actually? Chris, how about we start with you this time?
I mean, especially for the aerospace industry, there's a lot of change now. There's flight shaming, CO2 reduction, zero-based reduction on that. So on the top priorities, of course, is sustainability and electrification of the aircraft. But this would be just an incremental innovation. We're looking beyond what is in 10 to 15 to 20 years. How will mobility of people change? Might cities change? How will urban air mobility influence this? And actually, we have some interesting things going on here in the region, where we test, for example, city taxis and how people move inside an urban area. But disruption has already begun in the aerospace industry, which is a good time for innovation, actually.
So, do you think actually that disruption is, technology-driven? Is it because there is an emergence of exponential technologies that the industry is being disrupted, and your customer actually are changing what they are wanting? Yeah. What is it really, in your view, the driver of this kind of disruptions?
I think the main driver is that technology is accessible for everybody today. Software or hardware, it's very easy to get there. Entrepreneurship is a known career path people can take today. This wasn't that way 10 to 15 years ago.
Yep.
And of course, the customer wants something else than vehicles that pollute the environment.
So more sustainability.
More sustainability, and the customer will not wait 5 to 10 years. He wants it now. So that's where we come into place.
Absolutely. How about you, Bernd? How would you define this?
Yeah, speaking about automotive industry, I would say we are in the middle of a transformation process. The challenges are huge.
Yeah.
some people say the next 10 years there will happen more than the last 100 years in the automotive industry. And if you just think about autonomous driving and all the connectivity that needs to come with that, speak about electrification, sustainable mobility, and service around mobility in general, we see many technological challenges where it's clear that we can't innovate everything on our own. And that is why open innovation and open the company up to innovators from outside is really crucial for the future success for our company. This is something we realized many years ago, and we focus in many ways also in internal accelerator programs, internal innovations, but also bringing outside in impact into the company.
Absolutely. So here we are talking about two kinds of innovation. So the outside-in innovation and the inside-out innovation. And from what I am hearing is that both are important to be able to be relevant in our digital world. Please, Youssouf, why do you think in our age corporate innovation is important?
So Bernhard and Chris explained it very well. Traditionally, innovation was done in-house. So corporations built their success based on 1, 2, 3 products. And innovation was for them to invest in R&D in the development of those 2, 3 products. But the startup era came, and we had a lot of disruptive startups coming on. And disruptive is a fancy word today, and it has a positive connotation, but it comes also with a lot of destruction.
Absolutely.
So entire business lines are destroyed. Sometimes entire businesses are destroyed due to disruption. And corporate innovation through startup has become a necessity. It's not a CSR activity or something that companies now do in order to please the public. They have to cooperate and integrate startups into their processes in order to avoid, to incur the losses that would come if those startups came to disrupt your industry. And this is the reason why corporate innovation and external corporate innovation through startups is important.
Awesome, and you touch a very important point, which is as well this link between the corporate innovation strategy and the internal innovation strategy of the company. So my question for you guys, how is the corporate venturing strategy part of or linked to the corporate innovation strategy of your company, and how the two are linked? So for example, if we take your case, Bernd, how does what you do enter under the umbrella of the corporate innovation strategy of the whole group, and what is the link between the two?
So, first of all, there is no separation. We only have one corporate innovation unit, so to say. And what we do inside in, inside out, or outside in is all under one umbrella and belongs to the company's innovation strategy. And but to address your question more, it's also how do you bring the innovation, let's say, into real impact, meaning bringing innovation to the customer or to a real business. And this is especially in our industry a huge challenge because you have different, I would say in any corporate you have two different worlds. You have the innovation world, and then you have the world who is doing their serious business, like the operation where the company makes money now. And getting from innovation to the core business processes and units, this is the challenges we face and what we try to address with our approach with startups. And we do that by what you have to understand in the misunderstanding between a corporate and a startup is that startups always or sometimes complain about the complex processes, long decision making, and so on.
Absolutely.
And corporates or our business units sometimes complain at a lack of active steering and delivering on target times and so. And but it both has a reason, and both, if they understand, can be a really fruitful cooperation. Because what we can do very good is to industrialize solutions, meaning going from unit 1 to millions of units. And this is something where we can help startups, but at some point we, of course, have to be sure ourselves that what we deliver to our customer really works. And that sometimes decision-making processes take quite long. If you think about autonomous driving, we really need to assure for this 99.9% of certainty before we deliver a product to our customers.
Absolutely. And so when you were talking about that, do you have a specific BMW code of conduct toward the startups? How you're going to onboard them? What is the level of accuracy of whatever their products or services are? How you're going to train / scale up their solution? Do you have this process in place? All right, can you tell us more about it?
Yeah, that's basically us, BMW Startup Garage. We're like the gateway for the startups into our core businesses. And on the other side, the matchmaker for what our company needs to find the solution and start it. So we identify the right startup solution in the market, and we onboard startups in a very fast-track process. The startup generates revenue from the very first project, so to say. And we also support the project. And we figured out it needs a dedicated unit really to make this partnership work.
Right. Chris, do you have the same kind of code of conduct? How do you approach startup? Do you have a full-fledged corporate innovation strategy from which you derive, the external collaboration with startup? How is it done? How is your collaboration with startup done?
So we have an overall company strategy on what we want to achieve, and for that, I would not say that there's a corporate innovation strategy, but more a strategy for innovation within the company. Because what you said before, allocating the different models and linking them together will bring you the impact. So working with startups, getting innovation from inside out, outside in, that is only if you have all the models in place in one way or another, you're going to actually achieve company and double-digit billion P&L companies. So that's the first thing. So only launching an accelerator or a fund will not bring you the impact. So in Airbus, we take a look on what are the company strategy, what are the technologies we're looking in, and then we decide, is this a technology for a startup? Then we certainly have the capacity to find it, because we are present in some entrepreneurial ecosystems, and others we have partnerships. So we are able to find the best entrepreneurs. Or we decide this is a topic we have to do internally, or it is a topic that maybe Microsoft or Cisco can also find a solution. So you always have to think about, is it even a topic for a startup? Because not always startups will bring all the solution. Secondly, can you build it your own, or do you want to buy it in?
Right.
So if you have that really clear, and you have a company that is really open to partner and have those processes in place, it should actually work pretty well. The thing today is that companies launch accelerators, incubators, whatsoever, without having the proper processes behind.
Exactly.
Place. And also from the startup side, finding startups nowadays is not hard, but find the right ones is certainly hard. And we also find startups teaching them how to do enterprise sales, B2B. It's very complex. It's not a show pitch. It's not an investor's pitch. It's very, very different. And get to know the people inside of the company that can unlock budgets. So this is important to understand, because a corporate will not adapt to a startup. So a startup has to adapt to a corporate or having units in between, like our units, that make the link.
It's debatable, you know. Being an entrepreneur, you know, hearing that, I'm like jumping. Adapting to corporate, why not, if it makes sense, right? But I want to jump actually on something that you said before when we were talking about how you're going to vet the startups. And you said sometimes you're going to choose the startup based on the technology, for example, you are looking for, and sometimes about the problem that you want to solve. And then you decide if this problem can be solved internally or externally, right? So in your view, what is the most important here when it comes, you know, to corporate venturing strategy? Are we going in the world and fetching for the latest disruptive technologies / crazy ideas, or are we first starting by identifying the real challenges that as corporate / society / communities are facing, and then we see who may be able to help us solve that? Do you have any specific process on that, or it's on a case-by-case basis? And I truly believe there is no right or wrong question. It's literally super curious to know how it's working. What is your view, Youssouf, about that, and you know, all your case studies, etc. Chris, in your corporate, and obviously Bernd, who wants to take this up?
Yeah, I mean the good thing about corporates is that they have unlimited challenges, right? So you can take those challenges that are the biggest pain points and where you have the highest probability of, first of all, succeeding, and secondly, really hitting a pain point, and also getting to scale, right? Because, I mean, from Airbus side, I can say anything where there's not a business case of 100 million euros behind it is not looked at. So we also look for startups in this. And when you then have discovered the success cases and have made some success cases with some business units, you're going to see that there are more business units wanting to work with you, and this goes then hand in hand to the success. That's how we go. I don't know how you.
Youssouf, what do you think? What are your views?
I want to jump on that and quote Miguel Arias, who used to work in Telefónica. He was the head of innovation, I believe.
Yeah.
And he had this amazing sentence where he said, corporations that do not innovate will fail. And that in this world of rapid technological change, the corporate elephants of the business world need to learn how to dance with the more agile and leaner gazelles.
Yeah.
Right, you know it.
Yeah.
But they need to learn how to do it without stepping on their toes. So I think it's really both ways. Startups have to learn and have to adapt to corporations, but also corporations have to learn how to work with startups. And from our point of view in Sheraa, we've seen many collaborations fail because there is no effort made from either parts. And we came up with a framework that we usually share with the corporations in order to show them the way on how to work with startups. If you have to categorize, especially in this region, if you have to categorize the level of maturity of corporations and how they are used to work with startups, I would say that in this region, most of corporations are at an early stage of maturity. Some of them are very mature. I'm not saying all, but most of them are an early stage. And what we advise is that the corporation first and foremost, in the early stage of the relationship with the startup, to define clearly a problem statement. This will guide and avoid wasting time with startups in the selection process, will guide the startup to pitch and tailor their offering and their presentation to the needs and goals of the corporation. The second step we advise corporations to take is to ensure there is a fit with the startups. And that involves the corporation putting into contact the business units that are involved in the specific innovation goal that they have with the startup to see if there is a fit and make a decision. Once that's done and the startup has been vetted and we know we want to work with the startup, another important step is to provide the startup with the right connections in the corporation. And that is very important. I've seen many examples of corporations providing, as a point of contact, the partnership manager, and not the business unit that is involved or concerned by the specific innovation. And that has to be complemented with establishing strong communication channels internally. So the business units that are involved in the specific innovation have to have access to the decision center and also establishing strong communication channels externally with the startup. That facilitates the work and the flow of the startup. Another thing is, and this is where the corporation needs really to adapt to startup, is that they should shorten their procurement process. And this really applies more in the corporate...
You say they should or they shouldn't?
They should shorten their procurement process, because most of the startups are not equipped to take on the long and very, very fastidious procurement processes of companies.
Payment processes of 180 days.
It's one, you should have a clear picture what you want as a corporate out of this partnership, and also from the startup. So if this does not align, this is like the basics, then it makes no sense to partner up. Second, and that's also about speed and accelerating, is that as a corporate, you have to develop kind of an investor mindset. And the third thing...
What do you mean by that? You will explain, okay.
And the third thing is you need to link to corporate business units, to the core, because there is one dominant reason why a startup wants to work with the corporate. And this is they want to take advantage of the unfair advantage a corporate can deliver.
Okay,
No.
interesting.
One thing is reputation and reference, but the other thing is access to market, access to customer, and access to industry partners. And if a corporate is aware about that asset and brings that into the partnership, then it's not a problem to find the right startups and attract top startups. And as a corporate, you also should link the startup to the core businesses in terms of supporting them with facility, with the infrastructure, industry knowledge is an asset, technology knowledge, and that's best delivered if the startup works directly with the engineers in our company. So at the end, it helps the startup to make the product and market ready and to scale up. It scales up much faster than with venture capital money. Money you need, of course, it's like the fuel for growth, but there is no growth without clients at the end. This is, and that is an advantage a corporate can deliver that no other institutional investor can deliver. And speaking about the investor mindset, what I think you have to have a standardized process to onboard and select startups very strictly. So investors are brutally efficient in that. So you need a way and a process that makes that we can very quickly evaluate the potential of a startup and also have some criteria that are standardized. Because otherwise, if you have changing rules on each startup, you end up in a mess. And sometimes we have this tough, strict criteria. Like one example, we only partner with startups who are venture capital backed.
This is your rule?
This is one of our like, basic entry criteria. And we had with startups a lot of discussion. Well, I'm self-founded, I generate revenue already, but we are very strict on that because at the end, if the business unit pulls and wants to go the next steps, they have to grow very fast. That's one reason. So they need capital very fast to speed up. And the other thing is that we rely on the evaluation of investors who evaluated the company already. So we don't discuss this, but if you discuss separate criteria with each startups, then you are not a reliable partner.
So you are more into, from what I understand, again, it's not to challenge you, but I'm hearing a lot of, in a way, a barrier to entry, and why not? Maybe this is what works well for BMW. If I'm already taking a startup that is VC-backed, so probably I'm going into the scale-up, they run fast, they are revenue generating, etc. I'm already taking something that the market has proved itself to be valid. So where is really, and here I'm a bit challenging, what is really that you are looking for? Pure innovation, disruptive innovation, or something that will answer to a need or a problem that you are having today. I guess you see what I'm going with that.
So disruptive is a hard word. So I would say if you are interested in disrupt your company, then a venture client approach is the wrong approach.
Exactly.
Then you better set up a unit far away from your core business and try to disrupt your existing business, because you won't be able to come up with a partnership with a business unit. Our focus is more transforming our company into the future challenges that I mentioned before, like electrification, autonomous driving, all that, what we need in the next 5 to 10 years, so to say.
So you are saying it's more optimization work, right?
Optimization, transformation, but also generating new business opportunities, which is in the context of our strategy. What's outside our strategy, it's really hard, a venture client approach.
Thank you, Chris.
I mean, also from our experience, working with the early stage startups is just a waste of time on both sides, because early stage startup is so the corporate is not a sandbox and not a tool or a toy box. So they somehow need something that is ready, plug and play, that has a runway, that is funded, that will not die after not even going to the POC. So it is a valid question if what we're doing is innovation or disruptive, or not even innovation, because it is very incremental.
Yeah.
It's a solution for challenges we have. But I would also highly doubt any corporate that is not owned by the founders that will establish an innovation vehicle that will disrupt their business. The only one that is actually very successful in it is Google X, but they are founders owned. I would say that no CEO in the world of a corporation has the attempt or the interest in disrupting its own business when it's profitable, because he will be accountable for it the next 5-10 years, but then it's going to be off as well. So that's how just a corporation thinks. If there are some that would really take this challenge on, I'm happy to see that, but for the time being, I've not seen it so far.
Yeah, and Chris, in your experience, be it at Airbus or in your previous company, can you give us an example of a very good integration of a startup, for example, that you integrated back to the mothership / a good collaboration, and an example of a failure, which can happen?
I mean, there are a lot of
And what is the lesson learned?
There are a lot of failures, and that's how the game also goes, and it's a risk we take.
Yeah.
One nice story I would like to tell about the previous telco where I worked in was that there were a lot of network problems. If you have a lot of network problems, you have a lot of customer inquiries. This process was very manual, so people on the hotline answering that. And then we integrated the startup solution, which was a chatbot, but the underlying technology was more the AI platform underneath it. And we managed to cut costs about 80% by automizing the whole process. So that was one of the rare examples you see where there's a successful...
it was a pure partnership, equity-free partnership, or you invested?
We did invest. We did invest in the startup, and that's why it's even more rare that it takes a good end. And bad partnerships is this another example from the same field, also chatbots, where we wanted to invest in a startup that did a chatbot. We could have cut costs as well on the corporate side, but they did have a similar solution from Microsoft in place from the mothership. So this was against the not invented here syndrome, and then we did not invest. And this company later on became a unicorn. So this is one of the lowlights I want to point out on unsuccessful collaboration.
Interesting. Youssouf?
I would like to come to the defense a little bit of startups because you said that sometimes working with early startups can be a waste of time from both sides. Sometimes also the corporations do not have a clear post-pilot framework. So first, they do not establish with the startup what are the KPIs of success prior to starting a pilot.
Yeah.
And they do not follow through after with the startups. Some corporations even are blacklisted by startups today. They know that they run pilots with many startups and never follow through.
Yeah.
But I want to just throw this question in the air. Maybe not working with early startup, maybe it can be a missed opportunity. So you were in the telco sector, and Telefonica, one of the reasons why it launched Wira was because it missed out on WhatsApp, it missed out on Skype. So if Skype came to you, it is not VC back, and comes to you with the idea, would you reject it? And wouldn't you be missing out on an opportunity?
Yeah, I think it's a valid question, of course. That's why we also exist, to bring both worlds in. But I really highly doubt that even if the WhatsApp had asked us for an investment when it was in the early stage, Telefonica would have said yes. Because it's just so many layers in between until a decision is made at the end, and they would not have the mindset there that the world is changing. This might have changed now with the recent years, where we see so many startups coming up that really can take a part in disruption. But I think it's all about like the corporate mentality. I mean, almost every day they get a pitch deck of something, so you have to bet on something. But I would really think that then the CVC approach, highly investing in companies and at the end taking them over, will be the right approach for early stage and for disruptive, because they're just aliens within the corporate bodies, and there are so many layers you have to cross until you're there, which you can challenge, but which is very, very hard. So I would really tend to either partner or heavily invest, because also for early stage startup, then they invest all their time with the big customer, and maybe there's some Vodafone or Etisalat which could be a better partner.
So how do you guys measure innovation?
The impact of innovation, return on innovation.
Whatever how you define innovation, how do you measure it? Let's say, obviously, you are having your activities, a portfolio of startup to target, collaborate with /invest play with. How do you know that you reach your KPIs of success, whatever this means to you? How do you track your work?
Shall I start?
Please.
Go ahead.
So
Sorry.
we have pretty strict KPIs where we measure success. One is how many startups get a follow-up purchase order.
Okay.
So what is the transfer rate out of our program into the next partnership level? This is one KPI, but the most important KPI is what can we bring to the customer, to the final customer, let's say.
As a product or a service.
As a product, launch it in operation, and what impact does it have in our services and products. Yeah.
So this is the second.
This is the second. As you know, automotive industry is not like you develop every year a phone.
Yeah.
We have a 3-year development cycle. So after our 4 months, there's still a way to go for a startup for serious production.
Right.
And but this is at the end where we want to be measured. What's coming out at the end? Yeah.
Okay, interesting. And so far, are you reaching your KPIs on a period of time? I don't know, for the last 3 years, for example. Are you happy with what you achieved so far?
We are doing good. We are pretty happy. We have launched some, but not in the area of a product innovation, but in a process innovation, like manufacturing, IT business. But we will see the first, I would say, next year, and in 2021 even more in innovation in a car.
And how do you respond, for example, to Uber and Lyft kind of killing you, or at least killing some of your market? How do you respond to this kind of disruption?
Uber killing us. They are in a different business somehow. We are a car manufacturer. Yeah, we still see a lot of growth in privately owned cars, but of course we see the trend of sharing cars and mobility on demand. And for that, we already founded in 2011 our Now group with car sharing service, with a bunch of services around there, ride sharing services also included charging service, parking service with Park Now. And just recently, we teamed up with Daimler, one of our competitors, and made a joint venture.
Okay.
Because we see this business system works at scale. So
Awesome.
we join our efforts and to make it even bigger.
Absolutely. So this is really a super relevant, pertinent answer to this kind of disruption. If Uber or Lyft is taking the same client to be using a car sharing, service instead of the same client buying your product, so definitely, they are taken. So I think it's an amazing answer to disruption. How about yourself, Chris? Measure of innovation / your KPIs.
Revenues generated in the B2B2C market. So very heavily on how big the procurement contract is the corporate does with the startup. That's one. The higher that is, the better for us. The not that good for the corporate. And internal efficiencies, like cutting costs, which you cannot measure until the end, but you can have a proxy. That would be a second one. And when we did investment, also the portfolio valuation. But as I said before, investing as a corporate in early stage, I think it's nonsense. So it highly go into what actually gets into the business, what gets industrialized.
Awesome, thank you so much. Youssouf, do you have anything to add to close the panel?
Well,
before I close the panel?
Our metrics, our measurement of success in Sheraa, and it is two metrics basically: the number of contracts signed and the revenue that was generated from those contracts. So it means for us that we have well understood the innovation needs of our clients and that we have sourced the right startups for them.
Thank you so much. Guys, I need to wrap up. Thank you really for all your insights, and I hope that you got a sense of the expertise and something at least that can be leveraged within your corporation, or if you are a startup, how you may want to approach the kind of corporate that can help you scale if it makes sense. Thank you again, and I wish you a great afternoon.